This is Hack the Sat, helping you find the tips and tricks to ace these standardized tests. Alrighty, so let's do the test. You can find this on the College Board website or linked in the description below. Print it out and let's get prepared. So, question 1, we got Greek yogurt to begin. First paragraph, we see there's not really a question tied to it, so we can just ski this section to get some general context. Quickly reading, you should find 3 main points. Greek yogurt is growing big, some stats are given, and it's possibly bad for the environment. This is the intro section, so we can get a thesis from the last sentence, which just happens to be our first question over here. Alright, so now let's use that vision I talked about. This is a word choice type of question. They want to see if you can use the most appropriate sounding word in context. This question is comparing advantages to potential drawbacks. Going through the choices, only the word outweigh is a comparison word. All the other words are used to describe competitions: outdo, defeat, outperform. And if you plug it in, advantages outweigh disadvantages, it sounds about right. So the next paragraph, we see these labels to sentences. So I would immediately start to sled. Pay close attention because a paragraph structure or order question is coming up soon. Question 2 is all about relevant detail. Immediately, I think about reading for context. Context is usually found in the sentence before and after the sentence at issue. In this case, sentence 4 seems pretty linked to sentence 3 over here. If you read sentence 3 closely, you'll see that there's a line that talks about a number of uses. Found a number of uses for acid whey. The first part is already given to us, livestock feed, so we want something different that farmers can use. Choice A talks about people, which is wrong because we know this subject is about farmers. Choice B, gas, this could possibly be an answer because it's not talking about just normal people. Choice C talks about humans again. Nope, we don't want that. So we can go ahead and mark these 2 answers off. And choice D elaborates on the first option as protein feed. And this is informational and it looks good, but it does not provide a number of uses as the previous sentence had stated. So this one was quite tricky, but the answer is actually B, because gas is actually another use, and it supports the sentence that was talking about found a number of uses for acid whey. Question 3. Immediately, this looks like a grammar question about verb tense and possession. We see that B and D discuss one waterway and its possession of something. We don't want that in the question. We want to talk about how whey pollutes many different types of waterways, plural, not just a single one. So B and D are not going to be correct. That leaves A and C. C shifts the verb tense to something that happened in the past, could have happened, but we know that acid whey still can do so in polluting new waterways, and it can do so in the future as well, so it must be A. No, could have. No. Okay. Question 4. Vision from the answer choices tells us that this is a punctuation type question. Yogurt manufacturers, food scientists, and government officials. This must be a list type of question if it's talking about all these different groups. To list things, we often use a comma. No comma is needed after the and in this case. The comma before and is actually optional. It's called the Oxford comma. College Board won't test you for Oxford comma use between 2 specific choices, but in this case, it is good to use, and therefore that's what makes C the correct answer. Question 5. Okay, so here's the structure question that we anticipated earlier. Sentence 5 states that if it is properly introduced. If it is improperly introduced. This sentence is all about pollution and bad effects. These questions are kind of tough. You have to try all the choices. Focus on the transitions of this sentence and see where it fits relative to other sentences. After sentence 2, we see that the author writes about whey as difficult to dispose of. Difficult to dispose of. See there? And it seems logical that we would talk about negative effects as a result of this difficult disposal. So that would make after sentence 2 C the best choice here. Question 6. Okay, this is a relevance question. First, I will get a feel for the sentence in context. This intro sentence talks about conservation having issues, but it could also be good. So the following paragraph should support this claim. When we keep reading, yes, we see that this paragraph talks about good stuff, so likely C or D. That means we shouldn't delete these. C. Neither this sentence nor paragraph really talks about disposal anymore. So D sounds much better, since we're talking about the good stuff, the benefits of Greek yogurt in this case. Question 7. These questions are interesting. They are all about standard English word use. The way to solve these questions, to be honest, is just to read and practice using standard English. Usually we say something serves as. That's how the English phrase goes. And it's digestive aid in this case. So not serve to be, not serve like, or serve for. That makes choice B the correct answer. Question 8. If you look at it, this is a type of redundancy question. The SAT loves these. A general rule good for the entire SAT is you should always use the correct grammar and punctuation with the least amount of words possible. Never fluff it up or choose the fluffy answer. The SAT is all about conciseness. Remember that. The subject, if you identify in this paragraph, happens to be Greek yogurt, a single noun. We can also use parallelism to help us. English loves to keep the tense of the verbs consistent. In the part before, we saw the word serves being used. Serves, see? So to maintain parallelism, we want a verb tense very similar to this, and contains just happens to work just fine. And it works grammatically as well. All the other choices are wrong grammatically. Choice A looks good, but remember, to be concise, you don't need to state it, since we already know the subject is about Greek yogurt. Question 9. This is a type of transition question. Once again, I would recommend using elimination and context. If you throw out the transition for a moment, you see that this question wants you to talk and add to the benefits explained in the previous sentence. Also is a good transition that talks about, since it is used to bring new things in, to add new things in. The other transitions are all about elaboration. They don't help add or bring in something new. They help explain what was already said. So that makes A the best choice. Question 10. This is a word choice type question. These questions are all about word use, using the most appropriate sounding words in context. They can't be too silly, informal, or overly formal. While other options have similar meanings, satiated specifically means feeling full. The other options can be used in different contexts but aren't the best use here, so choice A is best. Question 11. This is about conjunctions. We want to connect two different types of clauses. First part of the sentence is a dependent clause. It starts with because. So in the second part, we want to begin with a subject to give the sentence, the new sentence, a noun context. Choice B effectively does this with good punctuation and a comma, since it uses farmers by naming the subject. Okay, so that happens to be the first passage. Next passage is all about dark snow. Immediately, we can ski this section just to get some general context. It's about Greenland and ice sheets. Question 12. This is a statistics type question. You know, the College Board loves to throw in these questions about looking at graphs and stuff. I don't know why they have an overly affectionate attitude towards stats both in English and the math sections. We can easily solve this by looking at the graph provided down here. We see the part of the passage that doesn't change is talking about how low temperatures can fall in the winter. That is represented by the solid line seen over here, the average daily low. Looking at the graph, it's obviously 12 degrees, and other choices aren't correct. That makes the answer B. All right, question 13. This is all about conjunctions. We want to combine two sentences. Once again, we want to maintain conciseness and also good grammar. B looks pretty good, and the grammar makes sense. Ice sheets begin X following Y. So A would be the best choice here. Question 14. Transition questions again. We can once again use two methods, elimination and context. Looking at the choices, the odd one out is however, which signals a shift in the sentence. The other transitions are all supporting transitions that should support the previous sentence. If we read the sentence without transitions, we see there seems to be a shift with question 14. The Greenland ice sheet is thawing earlier than usual, so this sentence does indeed require a shift transition, making our original suspicion correct. Question 15. This is all about non-essential clauses, or what I call NECs, NECs. SAT loves throwing in extra details that aren't necessarily needed. NECs, you can throw them out and the sentence would still make sense. In this case, you want to first find the NEC, which in this case is an associate professor. ... This is an NEC because it is extra fluff that describes Jason. It's nice to know, but if you throw it out, you'll find that it's unnecessary. You still know Jason is a scientist. For example, I could read this as, but Jason Box believes, blah blah blah. I don't necessarily need his descriptor. Sorry, Jason. NECs can always be delineated using commas. Simply put commas around the beginning and the end of the NEC after you've identified it. So that makes C the correct answer. The NEC is an associate professor of geology at Ohio State. Question 16, punctuation. Semicolons are used to connect two independent clauses. In this case, there aren't two, so A and B happen to be incorrect. Colons are used to take a pause and state something afterwards, so the dark snow problem fulfills this role in description. I keep emphasizing conciseness, excluding the fluff, exactly the point here. D continues to add unnecessary fluff, so that makes C the correct answer. Question 17. This is a grammar question about comma splice. Choice C effectively creates a dependent clause afterwards. The other choices will create an independent clause, which of course cannot be joined by a comma, or it will create a comma splice. For independent clauses, you will usually need a semicolon or a period, so that makes C correct. Question 18, verb tense. Using context is a good strategy here. If we read earlier, this is talking about something in the past, in 2012 in Greenland. The sentence already stated that soot drifted, so now we want another verb in that tense to maintain parallelism in verb tense. Fell does this well, and so A would be the correct answer. Question 19. This is all about plurality. Are we going to use a singular word like its or possessive like there? Well, find the subject. The subject is snow and ice, since we know snow and ice is doing the reflecting of the sun's rays. So we can just circle that real quick. Snow and ice are two things. It's plural. So C or D is going to be the correct answer. C is just plain wrong. Their spell this way is not talking about a person or thing. It's talking about a certain location. Oops, sorry. Oh wait, no, that's correct. Okay, so it's talking about a location. However, we want possessive pointing to like two actual things, snow and ice. So that makes D the correct answer. Alright, number 20. This is all about best choice questions. This type of question, you need to read the question very carefully. The important point to analyze is completes the description of a self-enforcing cycle. That's what the answer will be based off. Many of the choices make sense, but we want the one that is going to define this positive feedback loop best. Reading around for context, this sentence is all about ice melts. So we want something that will tell us more about melting, which just happens to be choice D. The other choices look really good, but they don't answer the question which asks for self-reinforcing. Self-reinforcing, of course, is the ice melting itself. All right, question 21. Right click, we see this paragraph has the labels again, 1, 2, 3, etc. So we need a sled and read slowly to analyze each sentence because a structure question is coming. In 21, if you look at the answer choices, you see that the word itself is repeated with many other words and variations. This points to a concision type question. We want the choice that has the least fluff, which just so happens to be choice B. Everything else just repeats something that we already know or can readily infer with high accuracy. Choice A is especially funny. Right before there's the word repeat, then they say again. See? Repeat and again. Again is redundant. If something repeats, it will happen again. That's given. Question 22 is a structure type question, and here it is. We're looking for it. Remember, we need to read for context and transitions to see where this puzzle piece goes. This whole paragraph reads chronologically. It starts off with talking about what Box did in the past since 2012 and what he's planning on doing in the future. Sentence 4 is all about what Box is currently doing, and a very discrete detail, he's collecting crucial information. This is very tricky. What crucial information exactly, we don't know. If we put it after sentence 5, the details are explained, so that would actually make D the best choice. Alright, question 23, new article, this time on co-working. So this is like WeWork, if you're familiar with that company. Drawing connections between the passage and what you know is really good in staying interested and focus on the passages. We skim the first few lines, and we see that it begins with a personal anecdote from this author. 23 is a fill in the blank. We need a verb to describe this sentence. Immediately, I see this as a question about conciseness again. What's the most effective substitution for this sentence? Soon got worn seems kind of redundant. I could have just said worn off, so that actually makes D look good. B and C both use the word promptly to describe how quickly the feeling worn off. Nice info, I guess, but totally unnecessary and definitely extra. That makes D correct. Uh-oh. 24. This question I see is trying to test clauses. The first part of the sentence is a dependent clause, and we can't replace this part since it's not underlined. This means if we want a complete sentence, the next part, the replaceable part, needs to be independent. The sentence begins with having, but no noun is actually introduced. What is having? We need a noun. If you look at the choices, the only choice that begins with a noun and subject happens to be D, which begins with the noun I. 25. This question is testing prepositions. As I've said, the SAT loves to test some word use scenarios. You can't really prepare for this. It's just something gained by picking up commonly used phrases. You read an article blank about co-working. You usually read something about something else, and the others aren't really used in English speak, so that makes B correct. 26. Scanning the sentence, I see it's trying to punctuate a list. It talks about a broad category of nouns, office equipment, then gives certain types of examples such as photocopiers, printers, fax machines, etc. Lists are usually punctuated by colons. Colons say, hey, pause, we're going to group the next few things together. But this question is super tricky. They threw in the clause of such as, which is part of the previous clause since the beginning of the sentence. This clause introduces the things that follow, and therefore no colon is necessary in this case, making B and C not good. A is the correct answer, as it has one comma which pauses right after the list of nouns that are to follow. 27. All about transitions. We've talked a lot about the proper use of them. Each has a specific time, place, and manner. The part of the sentence that doesn't change talks about the common spaces these workplaces can have. This seems to add on to the previous sentence talking about how these co-working spaces are just like regular offices. B looks pretty good linked with the previous sentence. A uses however, which signals an opposing shift, so that's not exactly what we want in this case. D is a very concise option, but hey, office spaces aren't exactly linked to office equipment, so likewise isn't a good choice connecting these two. C seems to suggest the previous sentence, office supplies, is a cause for the next sentence. Office supplies don't cause office rooms, so that's kind of weird, and that makes B the correct answer. 28. Relevance question, yay or nay? Reading the sentence, it talks about the startup cost for a co-working space. Immediate red flag, because what I just read was about amenities in a space and not actually the cost. This makes C or D look particularly nice since it seems irrelevant. We gotta chop this. It's missing the point of the paragraph. A and B need to be chopped. C answers this exact question. D talks about the sentence already being mentioned. Well, no, the exact reason we don't like this is because we didn't hear it yet in this paragraph. Not that we already heard it. So that makes C correct. 29. Graphs. Dang, College Board really loves to mash math into the writing section. Graphs are wacky, so we gotta test all the possibilities since any of them could possibly work. Let's read the sentence to see the part that does not change. This is the part that is not underlined. Alright, well now I just underlined it. No matter what, we know this must be true, and we have to change the stats to match this. Try no change. Sentence says 64% prevent them from completing tasks on time. Yup, we can assume that's negative. In the chart though, it says 64% were actually positive in helping to complete tasks in a given amount of time. This is flipped, beware. That makes this choice wrong. Alright, in choice B, 71% are stated positive impact on creativity. Chart says yay, so B looks good. Let's keep going though. Alright, beware, this choice is worded super whack. Choice C, giving them 74% of ideas. So what exactly is that? 74% of my ideas come from a co-working space or occur when I'm there? No, that doesn't sound quite right. Remember, it's people, respondents that say 74% have a positive impact on giving ideas about the business, not 74% of all the ideas generated. People, not ideas. That makes C kind of wrong. D, same problem as A and C. First, the data is flipped. 12% is negative impact, so that wouldn't actually be an improvement as D stated. And remember, this survey is about people's response, not improvement of ability of any sort. So 12% improvement or whatever is wrong as well. That makes B correct. 30. This is testing pronoun use over here. Grammar questions are bad, but they come down to a simple trick. If there's an of before a who or whom, use who. Otherwise, use who. So if there's an of, it would be whom, of whom. Otherwise, anything else, you want to use who. Here there's no of, so it has to be choice C or D. Whom is not good here. Now, plural versus singular. People describes plural persons, so you would say use, like they use. Uses is for singular nouns like he. He uses. So since people is plural, you're going to want to say who use. People who use blah blah blah. Alright. Question 31, structure question. We got to add this, so we need to find the best location for this sentence to go. This sentence seems to be like something you would do at the beginning of your co-working journey, right? You put yourself in the author's shoes. Between sentences 2 and 3 appears a shift where the author goes from outside the space to inside. So that's what you would do. You would usually fill registration, find a seat, etc. once you go from the outside to the inside. So you need to register before you can get in, right? That makes answer C after sentence 2 the best answer here. Alright, question 32, punctuation. Hey, here's the list we were talking about earlier. No weird clauses this time though. The author is listing a group of colleagues, so a colon shall do. Choice A, no change, is good as it is. Here's the list, and a colon is good. 33. All right, this is another conciseness type question. All the choices seem to convey the same point of sharing an opinion. Which does best? Well, D is the shortest, but it's kind of weird. You wouldn't say, yo, let me opine this. You would probably simply say, share advice. It's simple, short, and commonplace in daily language, so not overly formal or weird. That makes A good as well. Alrighty, now we get to our last piece, the lovely philosophy piece. First, we get an intro to philosophy, transitions. Remember, study the part of the sentence that doesn't change. This part gives a plain and clear definition of philosophy. A, in broad terms, seems to explain this quite nicely. The other choices are trying to elaborate or explain something different. It's not what we want here. We really just want to introduce a simple definition of philosophy. 35. This is about conciseness. Immediately, we see the answer choices are all very similar. They use the word pragmatically, etc., and all mean about the same thing. However, we want the simplest. That's a common theme we talked about. A would be that, and it happens to make sense. Every other choice just has a lot of fluff in it. They just sound extra. You don't need to say speaking dot 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 dot. We get you're trying to explain this already. 36 is verb choice. Simple grammar question about conjugations. Identify the subject, which happens to be philosophy. It's a singular noun. So it has to teach with an S at the end. Teaches, like she teaches. Philosophy teaches, same thing. All the other choices are just wrong with the verb and subject. So the verb subject agreement. That makes B the correct answer. 37 is an addition question. Okay, so once again, we have to add a sentence from down here. Before we add, we should definitely read for some context. After all, this question is trying to introduce what comes next. So let's read ahead first. Stats given show basically colleges aren't very keen on having philosophy. That's what you should quickly synthesize from reading the next two sentences. This seems in contrast to the yee good promotion of this a few sentences ago. So we want a choice of contrast. A and B give off positive vibes, which is not really what the next two sentences end up showing after 37. C states students are the problem. They don't care for philosophy. But we don't really know that, and we don't know if it's true, as students are resisting. And D states that colleges are the ones at issue. And sure enough, that's what the context tells us. Colleges are rapidly cutting these programs and other stuff. 38. More transitions. We already read from the context in the previous question that this line and the line before seem to hint at the same thing, basically the decline of philosophy. The previous sentence stated this, and this sentence seems to further that fact. So we need a transition that continues this. Moreover, C does this well. It's saying more so, we see this is true. A and B are suggesting that this sentence is a result of the previous sentence, but that's not true. These sentences are equally related, but not a cause-effect relationship-wise. D is showing contrast, which is wrong, because these two sentences are similar and hinting at the same point, yet are also not cause-effect related. All right. Question 39. We read some more. 39 is all about conjunctions. We want to join two sentences. We want to join two independent clauses, so fanboys or something would work quite nice here. But no fanboys choices are given. So we want to look for conciseness again. Remember, beating a dead horse about conciseness here. The SAT loves the most efficient and effective choice. Conciseness and accuracy is king. Choice A happens to be quite concise, as you can see. B and D use the word results, which is like why. Test scores are already the results. It's mentioned later. So there's no need to pre-mention it already. See, test scores, mentioned later. So that is going to make the other choices sound wrong. Alright, number 40, more verb tense. This sentence is using past GRE data. The data already exists because students took them in the past. This data is not really being generated on the spot and used. We're looking at historical trends here. A and B are good for past tense. Find the subject, which happens to be students, plural. So students have done something, not has. A singular noun like Bob would use has. So Bob has 3 apples, or Bob has taken the test. Students have have taken the test, because it's plural. So have. Got it? So that's going to make the plural subject verb have be the correct answer here. All right, 41, possession. The subject is many students, not one student plural, actually many individual students cohesively. So we need to recognize that part first. That cuts choices A and B off because that's about a single student's possession. Now it's down to verb conjugation. B, majoring in is something students are currently doing and will continue to do so in the future. Check. This is going to be true of philosophy. C, with the word major, is like a one and done deal. That's not true. People will continue to do so and will continue to have their philosophy knowledge even till grad school. So that's going to make B the good answer. 42, relevance question. This proposed addition throws in Plato, the ancient Greek philosopher. Time out, what? The previous sentence was talking about modern uses like engineering and stuff. And now we throw it back to Greek classics? Nah, this just sounds plain wrong. So that makes C or D look quite good. D is just irrelevant though because Plato has no relation to modern employers. So that just makes C the best choice. 43, more grammar. We have to find the verb here first because this sentence oddly begins with that. Skills is what's actually the subject that is being discussed here. That skills. All right. Remember, we want conciseness and accuracy. If we just delete what's there, the sentence actually does make sense. Adding anything else just clouds the verb in the sentence. So that is going to make D good if we just delete this. If you read it, it sounds correct. That these skills are transferable across professions makes them especially beneficial to 21st century students. 44, last one. Okay, so this is a gender one. Find the subject, today's students. Now, how can we describe these people? Remember, students is plural. They are men, they are women, they are boys, and they are girls. Many. We have to use a plural word. Fortunately, everything else is describing something about singular. So there is actually talking about plural, many. And that's what's going to make D there the correct answer.